Good evening. It's Friday. It's time for the news roundup. I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. And we're going to open tonight with two very different stories. And the first of these is that Dacia Spring finally confirms that it is coming to the UK, and it confirms the price. Now, I've always said EVs were never going to dominate, take over or thrive when the average price of an EV was £50,000 plus, and they were never going to succeed at all if they were all twice the price of their ICE equivalents. Well, a number of companies have started bucking the trend. And the first of those to really hit the market big time is the Dacia Spring. The Dacia, for those who don't know it, is a Renault-owned company, and it's been announced that the price for the Dacia Spring coming into the UK starts at £14,995. And a £99 deposit now will reserve you a place on the queue, and the car will arrive in October for release, for delivery. Now, there are three different models, and you get different things, but they only vary by about £1,000. I think next one's up to about 15,000, 15,995, next one's 16. But what you get is a slightly bigger battery, slightly faster charging rate. But these are great little cars. They don't have any range. You're probably going to be lucky to get 100 mile out of them in the winter. They're not that well stacked with goodies and high tech, but they do have things like lane assist and cruise control. But they are great cars, and they're meant for little runarounds. Because don't forget that the average car spends 20 hours of a day sat outside somewhere doing nothing. And when they're used, the average car in the UK only does 20 miles a day. And that's well within the range of this, even if it got down to minus 50 and, well, you know the story. So these are great little cars for what they're designed to do. And at the price, well, you have to realise that the average used car price in the UK today is actually £17,000 according to the RAC and the SMMT. And that means that if your budget is between £15,000 and £20,000, you now have a choice. You can actually buy a used ICE car. You can pick up a 2 or 3 year old car that maybe has got 10, 20,000 miles on the clock. It's old-fashioned technology, produces fumes out the exhaust pipe, costs you a fortune to run it compared to EVs. Or you could now buy a brand new EV. And that EV will come with several years, usually 3 or 4 years of manufacturer's warranty on the whole car, and 8 years warranty on the drivetrain and the battery. For £2,000 less. But they will end up, I believe, seriously outselling the next contender other than Tesla, which is the MG4, because their starting price is £24,000. Well, at the moment, they're bringing out an MG2 shortly, under £20,000. This is going to be a very busy part of the market. Now go right to the other end of the market. Porsche. As a company, they're actually doing very well. Volkswagen, I don't know if it's their parent or partner or sibling company, I don't know the arrangement, but Porsche are actually doing really well at a time when Volkswagen aren't. Volkswagen are struggling, but the Porsche, which is not the cheapest of cars, is actually holding up really well. Porsche as a company have advertised that by 2030 they want 80% of all of their cars to be EVs, and that's a bold statement from someone whose cars are some of the best sounding in the world. So they've decided they're going EVs. They've launched the Porsche Taycan, which went down very well. It was overpriced, as were a lot of cars when they first came out, from Legacy Auto. It was one of my big bugbears. And they've just announced the launch of the Porsche Macan. This is a full EV, and it's a mini SUV. And this one, they announce, has already got 10,000 advance orders. And that is quite stunning for a premium brand like Porsche. Well, I must admit, I went to try and get a preview of the Macan, my local Porsche dealer. Was shown around the Porsche showroom. Immensely impressed with the dedication of the staff, the training they go through, their belief in their products and the way they treat people. And we did a little bit of filming there just to show what's available, but we're going back there, we hope, for a longer interview so we can have a look at some of these cars in greater detail. The Macan has not officially been released yet in the UK, and so they didn't have one they didn't have one we could look at. They also had several cars in the showroom that were customer cars waiting for delivery. They keep them inside, not outside, nicely polished. And also got to see a couple of really nice ones, including £359,000. I'm going to do a feature on that one if we get back into Porsche and show you just what you get for that sort of money. But that was a car and a half. Anyway, Porsche seem to be going from strength to strength with EVs. And so we'll see what the Macan brings, but it seems to be the right model. It is an SUV, which seems to be the trend at the moment. It's full EV. They will have learnt an awful lot from the Taycan, and obviously they have the Porsche heritage. So putting the two together, I've got a feeling this is going to be a really attractive car. And the advance orders indicate that there are people out there for whom something like a Porsche is where they want to spend the money. One of their strengths, besides the performance and the road holding, which are super sublime, one of the main features of a Porsche is the sound of it. And of course the EV doesn't. The EV is, I was going to say silent, but it actually isn't. Have a listen to this. You see, Porsche have included sound effects. It doesn't sound like a petrol engine, really, and it doesn't sound just like a loud electric motor. They seem to have blended the two together, and you get a gorgeous sound which only you inside can hear. People outside won't be affected by roaring exhaust pipes, but you inside, if you want to, can get that sound effect. And if you're on a long cruise, just turn it off. I think that's a brilliant idea. Well done, Porsche. Now, just finishing up on Porsche, just going to touch on salary sacrifice, because it seems to be leaping ahead as the preferred method for getting a new EV. Now, there are a lot of people out there say EVs sales are dropping, private sales have crashed, and it's only the fleet that's keeping them going. And in some ways they are perfectly correct. But what they don't understand is that a salary sacrifice or a lease doesn't count as a private sale if the driver of the car is a private person. It counts as a fleet car. So someone like Select Leasing or Tesla Leasing or Ford Leasing, if they lease a car to one of their customers, a private customer, that will go down as a fleet sale. So you can understand why the fleet sales are booming and the private sales are dropping off. It is a cracking way to get your hands on an EV. Now, salary sacrifice just goes one step further than leasing. You see, what you get, I'm not going to go into the details here, but you get loads of tax breaks and incentives. Your company who's supplying the car also gets incentives. You end up not paying national insurance, which your employer can choose to pass on to you, which will offset some of the monthly payments from the salary sacrifice scheme. And when we're looking at the prices, I've just picked two. One of them is Porsche Taycan, and it's about £800 a month. Now, I haven't looked on the Porsche website to see how much a brand new Taycan would cost on either a lease or a hire purchase agreement, but I can guarantee it's an awful lot more than £800 a month. This is a cracking deal. And in fact, we actually met a driver at the Chester East services about a month ago who had a brand new red Porsche Taycan, and he said it was only the salary sacrifice that brought it down into the affordable range which he had available to spend. At the other end of the market, if you can't reach to a Porsche Taycan, and I have to say most of us can't, Nissan Leaf round about £200 a month, £220, £230 a month. Now that is a fantastic deal. £200 a month for a brand new car, and if you can charge that at home at 7.5 pence a kilowatt hour, you've got a really cheap brand new car for the next 2, 3 or 4 years. Well, back to hypocrisy. Europe, Ursula von der Leyen is trying to work out a deal whereby she can slap a tariff retrospectively on Chinese imports of cars. And Italy, one of the member states, is actually seeking help from a Chinese company, Chery. And they're trying to do a deal so that Chery can start a factory up in Italy because the Italian government has got a target. It wants to reach 1.25 million cars a year manufacturing. It's languishing now way below that. The government sees this as a way forward, and the government also sees that one of the quickest and best ways of getting this off the ground is to go to the Chinese and either ask them for assistance or invite them into the country, let them set up a factory. They'll employ a few of your local workers. And Chery themselves, they've already got plans to launch 3 brands into Europe in 2024. So this may well fit in with their plans. Because at the moment, if they try to sell a car into Europe, they will pay a tariff. If, on the other hand, Chery is manufacturing in Italy and they're selling in Italy or France, I don't see how they can pay a tariff. That'll be an interesting one. We'll see what happens with that. In the meantime, over in the States, the Cybertrucks, they're absolutely streaming out of the factory. The rate is really ramping up, and there seems to be absolutely no slowing down in demand. This has got to be one of the most extraordinary vehicles released in the last 100 years. I think probably the last impact of this nature was probably the Model T Ford when it went into mass production. The demand and the interest in the Cybertruck is just amazing. It's out of anything that could have been predicted. And it's doing wonders because this is not a cheap car. So it must be having a good impact on the profits of Tesla. Tesla Model 2, that one they're now projecting is not going to ramp up as quickly. The Model 2, this is a $25,000 car. This is called the Redwood. Looks from the mock-ups we've seen to be a fantastic car. It is a cut-down version. It will be under $25,000. It is going to be launched next year, sometime in 2025. But they believe that it's probably going to take at least a year, maybe 18 months, to get up to the sort of production runs that they want to achieve. Now, if you look at the Model Y and what that's achieved, and you've got to realise that's a £50,000 car, can you imagine what figures they're going to be talking about for Model 2 if it's a £25,000 car? It's going to be phenomenal. So they're going to ramp up production. It's going to start in Shanghai. It's definitely going to go into Texas. And they've just announced that it's also going to go into GigaBerlin. And that will be for the European market. So it's a bit of a slowdown there, but Tesla's got so much going on at the moment. It's not really a problem because Tesla seems to be running pretty much flat out at the moment. They've got some expansions lined up, but they're not actually operational yet. So I'm not sure right this moment whether Tesla could actually manage to launch something like the Model 2. And so they don't. They're sensible. As long as the factories are running well, they're likely to just hold it until it's really demanded. And that will be when they see the sale of the Model 3 and the Model Y slowing down. But when they do start slowing down, the first thing they will do is drop the price. Tesla has a fantastic profit margin available to them. They can slash the price probably by £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 quite easily and still make a really good return on it. Their competitors can't. Well, just sticking with Tesla for the moment, they've reopened GigaBerlin, and this really is a sorry story. There's a few dozen, maybe 100 people in Germany who seem to have set up as some sort of anti-capitalist, anti-establishment organisation, and they're led or governed by someone who clearly has an agenda to shut down Tesla. I say that because just down the road from them is an open cast coal mine which uses 10 times as much water as Tesla uses. And one of this organisation's complaints is Tesla is ruining the water. Well, if they were that strong about water, why don't they go and have a quick word with the coal mine, the open cast coal mine? Tesla has a licence for, I think it's around about 1.5 million tonnes, barrels, whatever it is, of water a year, and they're actually using about a third of it. They're amazingly efficient. But the general principle is you can't go around, nobody should be able to go around in a free society blowing up power stations because you personally don't like the owner, the company, or what they're doing. I hope the German government really takes action against this. But in the meantime, Elon Musk paid a visit there yesterday, and he announced that they're going to be producing the Model 2 there, the Redwood. Interesting. Well, sticking with Germany, and Ford is suffering a bit over there. The Ford Focus is already at a standstill, and they have supplier strikes. Now, not sure if this is related. It's almost certainly something to do with pay, because Ford is desperate to cut costs of cars, that's ICE cars as well as EVs, so they can make more profit. And they do that in many cases by just going to their suppliers and saying, you are going to have to drop the price of your product, whatever you supply us, or we will go elsewhere. And it looks like the suppliers have reached their limit. There is only so much cutting back you can do before you have to turn around and say, I'm sorry, this is the lowest price we can have. And if that cutting back, as it usually does, involves cutting the wages of your staff, at some point, if you don't take action against Ford, they will do. So they're on strike at the moment. The Ford Focus production lines, total standstill. We don't know where this one's going. I can't see Ford actually doing an awful lot in the way of increasing the wages or the prices they pay for the materials. So we'll see what happens with this one. Europe, in the meantime, once again, governments around the world set targets for CO2 emissions, for PM 2.5, whatever it is, and time after time after time, they just slip, they call it, or soften. Oh, fantastic. It just means they're ignoring them. Well, in this case, the 2030 target is for CO2 emissions, and it's being pushed by Volkswagen. And Volkswagen has announced it can't meet the targets by 2030. Now, let me just make a point. It is still 6 years away from 2030, and Volkswagen is announcing today that they can't meet the emission standards that they agreed to a few years ago. I find that strange. 6 years. Anyway, So if they can't meet their targets, they get hammered with a tax for every car they sell. I'm just going to head back to Ford for a moment. And they've just been fined a record $365 million for selling their transit vans. Well, obviously, there's more to it than this, but this is £1 million a day fine. And the story really goes more towards how Legacy Auto operate their companies than the vehicles themselves. If they were making cars, let's say they make a transit minibus with 14 seats in it, they actually get charged a 2.5% tax as a car or a passenger vehicle. Now, in America, it's difficult to pull the wool over someone's eyes. But of course, Ford manufacture all around the world. And one of the places they manufacture is in Turkey. And what they've been doing over there is just blatant fraud. They have been making Ford Transit vans. They've been changing all the paperwork to say that they are passenger vehicles. And they have installed just a few bolt-on seats in the back, so that if anyone looked in, they would see seats and not question it. Well, unfortunately, someone did look into it and did question it, and they've now been fined $365 million for back duty that they've been avoiding. And it just makes you think that Ford has been struggling with selling cars, but one of their most successful lines has been the Ford Transit. And they've seen a massive surge in sales for the Ford Transit. But it now seems that they had to lie to get those sales. And I guarantee they wouldn't have passed on all of the savings from the tariff onto their customers. Oh, not a chance. Anyway, Ford's been caught. Toyota was caught last month with fixing emissions. Oh, we had that. When was that? That was 20 years ago Volkswagen got done for Dieselgate. 15, I don't know when it was, but it's still going on today. And Toyota, the CEO, has actually stood up and apologised to all the purchasers. Just makes you wonder what lengths the Legacy Auto will go to sell cars and keep their empires going. Well, new survey out, they found out that Lexus beats Tesla and Mercedes and most others in safety. Well, that's the headline, but it's not actually true. See, what this survey did was to look at not the safety features themselves, but how safe it was to use them, because none of these cars at the moment is classed as full self-driving. And therefore, all of the safety features, this is the lane assist and automatic overtaking, emergency braking, automatic cruise control, all of these, they cannot be used on their own. They must have driver supervision. The driver in all of these cars, whatever they say, has the ultimate responsibility for the safety of that car. And of course, many of these systems can be beaten. Tesla at one time was famous for just hanging a weight on the steering wheel, and the sensors picked up there was a weight on the steering wheels, assumed it was your hand, and allowed you to drive virtually indefinitely. You could even be fast asleep. Yeah, and some people were, and some people died. Other cars, they use face recognition to see which way you're facing. They use eye cameras to see which direction your eyes are looking. And if they detect that you're not looking at the road ahead for a reasonable period of time, then they will actually turn off the system and sound a big alarm telling you, yeah, you're back in control, mate, because you weren't using it properly. So this survey actually looks at how efficient those systems are in monitoring the driver who is using these safety features. And it turns out Lexus is the best. Now, I have to say that while that's actually good, I've noticed a difference. Now, Tesla were caught a while ago. They were warned that their driver monitoring was not up to scratch. The car would drive too far, even if the driver was asleep. So they actually issued an over-the-air update and they changed it. Now, it used to be you could drive 30 or 40 seconds without touching the steering wheel. You could no longer hang the weight on the steering wheel because that one, the sensors now detected it was a static weight. It didn't vary, and so it ignored it. And so you could actually drive your Tesla car on autopilot for 30, 40 seconds at a time and then touch the wheel and get another 30 or 40 seconds. And we got used to it. With the over-the-air update, that's dropped down to 20 seconds, and it's an absolute pain to do compared to before. Now, I know I have to be driving, I have to be alert, I have to be monitoring what the car's doing and everything else. But there is a real noticeable difference between 30, 40, 50 seconds and 20 seconds. And I can imagine the Lexus owners are really cursing the system, because if theirs is more efficient than Tesla at 20 seconds, then they must be monitoring the driver second by second. And if he so much as blinks or turns away, it's likely to turn it off. Anyway, there's got to be a compromise. One of the ways out of this, obviously, is just to launch full self-driving, because at that point you can go and sleep in the back seat. If it's actually a full self-drive car, go and sleep in the back seat and they can't monitor you. It doesn't make any difference. Whereas an interim stage at the moment where the cars are not full self-driving, but they act as if they are. My car can drive for hours on end as long as I just rest my hand on the steering wheel. I trust the car. It's never let me down. It does pick up things I actually wouldn't have thought it would pick up, and it's really very good. But I am still in control of the car. I am always looking out the front. I don't like looking to one side, even if the system will take over. And I have to say, I agree with this in some ways, but I also disagree. We'll see what happens, but roll on full self-driving, because that's the time you can actually put your kid in a car, a full self-driving car, and tell the car, take him to Cub Scouts or football practice or whatever, and when he's finished, bring him back home. Yeah, that's on its way. Well, thanks very much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please click the like button. And if you would, please subscribe. It makes such a difference to us as a new channel. If you click the bell icon, the notification, you'll be notified the next time we launch a video. And a massive, massive, massive thank you, last but not least, to our Patreon members. This side of the business is growing dramatically. We've had our most successful month ever, and thank you so much for your support for the channel. I'm Dave.